set up. There we go.
Here's your pen.
Oh, thank you.
That's what it looks like.
That's great. I love it.
Let me give Brad another one.
You have to earn it. Oh, you lost one?
What's that?
He didn't lose one, did he?
Yes. I only got 10. Gabe needed an extra one.
Tell them they were $25 each.
Should have.
Yeah, might
Should
as
be
well.
making a profit off of this.
Well, if you're going to lose them.
Well, next Monday, you'll see me. You'll see me selling tickets outside. And then I forgot who. Somebody else is going to handle concessions indoors.
There you go.
Popcorn, snow cones.
Oh, why not?
Stuff like that. Seriously, I got a friend in South Minneapolis who I didn't even know. She started watching just because I tipped her off. Now she watches the Orno meetings every Monday.
Why not?
Every other Monday.
I mean, it's great.
And she texts. She always texts me while I'm in the meeting too. It's like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
I gotta get dancing.
Sure. Thank you. We're setting our size up. There we go. I got that and I got that. That should be out of your way here, shouldn't I?
That'll work. Thank you so much.
That's why I was talking to you.
Any dog treats tonight?
What?
Any dog treats?
Yes, I do. I got them off the truck.
Well, I'll go get the dogs.
We don't have the dogs. Oh, we have to go. I'm on there. Did you pour it yet? Well, he plays both sides of the ship. Rebuttaling and putting.
I did.
I've known him since I was 25.
That's a number of years. More than you.
All right, good evening, everyone. We'll get started here. Everybody grab a seat. So good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I'm Mayor Charlie Miner from Long Lake, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your evening to join us here tonight. Ironically, I could smell some smoke in the air when I came in here. There sounded like forest fires from Canada, or smoke's coming down our way here, so don't be alarmed. That's not anywhere around here, and we're well protected anyways. We have some firefighters here tonight, just in case anything breaks out. So, yes, appreciate you taking time out of your night tonight. We have a Long Lake City Council up here, Councilmember John Dybeck, Councilmember Mike Feldman, and Councilmember Deirdre Qualley. Councilmember Gina Joyce already had plans long ago to be, that were brought her to other duties this evening, so she's not able to join us, but she is here in spirit. And I just want to remind everybody, this will be recorded by the Lake Minnetonka Communications Commission. Very appreciative of them taking time out of their day to film this for us. It'll be put on their website here in the coming day or two, and we'll certainly link to it at our City of Long Lake website as well. So anything we say here tonight will be recorded. And I want to start by thanking the Calvary Presbyterian Church for hosting this tonight. Great second time that they've done this, and appreciate staff Chelsea Ray and Chris Ray for helping us out. And it's a great venue for us here, very close to our fire station. It's a little bit bright out tonight, so I apologize about the PowerPoint or the projector here. It makes it a little bit hard to see some of that, so we'll do the best we can as far as pointing out what's on the slides here and what some of the information is we're pointing at on the slide. I also want to identify a few other folks in the crowd here tonight that have joined us. Appreciate for others. We have some elected officials that came out to join us tonight from some of our partner cities. So I'll start out in alphabetical order. I'll start with Medina. Mayor Kathy Martin is here from Medina, one of our partner cities, as well as Councilmember Dino Delorier is here. Thank you for joining us. Minnetonka Beach, Mayor Joe Pagano is here, and Councilmember Jennifer Halverson for joining us as well. And then Orono, Councilmember Lisa Benson is here. And we have a couple of fire officials in the room here tonight. We have Chief James Van Isle from Orono Fire, And Neil Wolf, who's a former Hamel Fire Chief and currently serves with the West Suburban Fire District, which I'll ironically talk about here in a little bit. So I believe I caught everybody as far as elected officials, and I guess I did not. So, but yes, of course, thank you. I got a couple of slides dedicated to Chief Highland. So yes, we'll make sure we don't miss Chief Highland, absolutely. So introductions there. Let's move on to kind of talking about what we plan on doing here over the next 45 minutes probably or so, maybe half hour to 45 minutes. Introduce Chief Highland. We're going to do some firefighter recognition, talk about, give you some updates on what's occurring on the fire department, some stats and things like that. Summarize what our last open house, which was in November 17th. I recognize a lot of faces here from those that were present that night. So thanks for coming yet again. Maybe a timeline of events. What has occurred since November when we had that open house? Actually, a lot has occurred, so there's a lot to get caught up on when it comes to that. Talk about the future, what's happening in the future of fire service, not only really in our greater communities here in Western Hennepin County. And then we want to do public comments. Give folks a chance who want to come up to the mic, make some comments. Also, we'll be happy to answer questions as a city council here, at least those that we're actually able to answer with the information we have in hand. But we want to make this an open dialogue. We want to make this give plenty of input to our community here. We purposely invited residents from all of the cities that are served by the Lone Lake Fire Department, which is of course Long Lake, Orono, Minnetonka Beach, and then Southern Medina. So that's the format for this evening. And I will move on to talking about Chief Highland. So again, welcome Chief Highland. Chief and I left in late December to go to Orono, so we worked as quick as we can to replace him, and did so by hiring Chief Highland. Began on March 27th. We had a really good selection process. It included some community members of the fire department, members of our city council, and Chief Highland came very, very highly recommended by particularly the firefighter leadership group. I know a lot of them have worked with him for many years due to their Excelsior Fire being a neighbor of ours. And he retired there after a 30-year career, retiring as Assistant Chief of the Excelsior Fire District here, I believe just last year. So when during the 3 or 4 month absence of a vacancy, we were thankful to have Assistant Chief Shane Gardner assist with being the interim chief, and he was also assisted by Battalion Chief Chris Adams, who both kind of tag team to do a number of duties to keep the fire department operating smoothly. I know other officers in the fire department stepped up as well to do their part, so we really appreciate that. So welcome again, Chief Highland, and appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks. Okay, so let's talk about the stats. What's been going on last year in the Long Lake Fire Department, which again serves 4 of our cities. These are stats the fire department put together, presented to both the Long Lake City Council, Orono City Council, maybe the Medina City Council in January, February. So this is a glimpse of what's been going on. I mean, their fire departments, you'd think, well, they must respond to a lot of fires. Well, that's on the top line there, but most fire departments, as we've been learning across the United States, that's really not the major thing they respond to. Medicals are really big. That's the third line down there, third row. 31 in Long Lake, 6 in Medina, 95 in Orono, 4 in Minnetonka Beach. Alarm calls are another big one. Row 7, false alarm and false calls, 6 in Long Lake, 6 in Medina, 65 in Orono, 11 in Minnetonka Beach. Rescue and emergency call, I mentioned those. So, fires are 4 fires calls in Long Lake, 0 in Medina, 17 in Orono, 1 in Minnetonka Beach. So thankfully, that is the anomaly as far as the calls that they go to. Incidents by city, 61 in Long Lake. I'm just kind of reading these for those of you that can't see the screen. 61 calls in Long Lake, 23 in Medina, 311 in Orono, 28 in Minnetonka Beach, and then 8 mutual aid calls. So that's where they assist surrounding fire departments who have a need for our firefighters to assist them, and then we get reciprocal assistance or mutual aid in those cases. So as a percent of the calls from the Long Lake Fire Department in 2022, 14% were in Long Lake, 5% in Medina. Again, that's not all of Medina, that's southern Medina. 72% in Orem, and 6.5% in Minnetonka Beach. Wanted to touch on those. Next is just some statistics on our firefighters. Again, this was presented to both of our city councils earlier in the year. And this is just recognizing the top responders and the top when it comes to training attendance. So both of those statistics are tracked, and they're tracked broken down by station. So as you know, we have Station 1, which is just really across the street here, and Station 2 down in Navarre in Southern Oregon. So that's a breakdown of top responders by each station and top trained attendants. So you can see the pretty big numbers there, and all of our firefighters that dedicate a lot of their time to serving our communities here, getting up in the middle of the night, running calls, things like that. So very appreciative of all of their efforts. So a little summary about, this is John Dybeck. I'm going to turn it over to John Dybeck.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I know many of you were here for our November open house. If you weren't, there's a link to it, a video of it on our city website as well. A link went out with the invite to this meeting, so you can check that out again, or if you didn't get to see it the first time, you can check out that video. But what we talked about in that, I just want to quickly summarize, was first the history of Long Lake. We have a long 106-year history that we talked about, and we talked about the terms of the current fire contract that we have with the agreement with the cities of Long Lake, Orono, and Medina, and that started in 2002, and that was made up so that there would be a fire advisory board made up of equal representation from each of those three cities, and then the operational and capital budget approval process. We talked about how it was one where Orono actually has the greatest amount of control because they have the largest service area. And then the Minnetonka Beach is a separate contract that was added later. And while they're not part of that three-member agreement originally, they do participate in our fire advisory board meetings. However, they aren't part of the budget approval process that the other three cities go through. And then we talked about the shared ownership of Station 1. That's 50% owned by Long Lake and 50% by Orono. We talked about the future fire services meetings that have been held quarterly for the last several years with the surrounding communities. I think there's about 11 or so, maybe more. And we talked about JPAs and districts and national trends and the fact that fire departments are going more towards merging rather than splitting up. We talked about Excelsior Fire District as an example. That's a district made up of 5 cities: Excelsior, Shorewood, Deep Haven, Tonka Bay, and Greenwood. And they started that, I think, around 2000. And in fact, Mike and I met with the Excelsior Fire Chief yesterday, just a little field trip down there, and he kind of talked us through about the challenges that there were at the beginning of that, but how it's paid off in the way they operate now. So that was good to hear. And then we talked about negotiations with Orono. Charlie and I had been negotiating with Orono throughout last summer towards a proposed fire board model, an independent fire board with a JPA, rather than the fire department being under any one city. It would be instead under this independent fire board that would be made up of city officials from each city, but not run under the cities. And then we talked about the offer that we had from Orono in September, and then the options for Long Lake and financial implications. And we tried to sort of, throughout that presentation, we tried to present the theme that Long Lake fully supports the firefighters and the sacrifices they make for the safety of our community and the other communities served. So then let's talk about what's happened since then. That was in November. So in December, that's when Orono hired Chief James Van Isle, and so we started our search process for a new chief. In January, we sent a counteroffer to Orono And I'll go into more detail on these, on the following slides, but just to give you a quick timeline. We sent the counteroffer to Orono that we haven't heard back from yet as of today. In February, the Orono approached the state legislature in an attempt to move the President Relief Association, that's the pension fund, from Long Lake to Orono, or at least have the option to have some firefighters move over to Orono without losing years of service or pension that they'd accumulated here. That was not with the agreement of Long Lake, and I'll say a little bit more about that. In March, that's when Chief Highland started, as Charlie mentioned, March 27th. Welcome again, Mike. And then in April, we hired special counsel and we sent a letter of notice to Orono regarding 4 breaches of contract. I'll say a little bit more about that. And then also in April, Orono rejected a loan of the new command vehicle to Long Lake Fire, even though we had a former agreement, and again, I'll say some more about that. And then in May, most recently, we approved the purchase of some needed equipment for the firefighters. And then there's also a second letter that just went out this week regarding some notifying Orono of some contractual obligations regarding Station 2 in Navarre. So, first, just summarizing the offer that we sent in January. It was a 2-part offer. The option A, which is our preferred, was to go back to the table that we had been at for 3 months in the summertime, and try to put this joint powers agreement together, again, kind of like Excelsior did with their surrounding communities, and have the fire department operate under an independent fire board. That was our option A. If Orono was not willing to do that, we were willing to consider option B, which would be to sell Long Lake Fire for $2 million. We would take full ownership of Station 1 and then lease back the station for an equivalent amount of what fire service would cost us going forward, so that they'd be offsetting costs. The effective date would be after this current contract is over, which would be January 1st, 2026. We would have an advisory role in a fire advisory board, but not one that has any kind of authority like the current fire advisory board is set up. And then we would have an opportunity to exit that with 36-month notice, so that we had the option to join the district in the future. And the reason we were willing to do that was because if we could own an asset that we could have for a future district opportunity, then we could still consider a district, which is our first choice, and then we'd have an asset to bring to that district. So that was the thought behind that. But as I said, we've not heard anything back from Orono on this offer since January. In February, okay, so in February, the Orono had scheduled a meeting with our staff of our Representative Andrew Myers and Senator Morrison, and we were invited to come to that meeting too at the state capitol. And the intention there was to try to see if they could get a bill authored that would allow the years of service and funds to move from Long Lake to Orono before our contract was over. That takes legislative action to do that. And Charlie and I were there, Scott was there, and we spoke against that. We didn't feel like there should be this hybrid relief association fund. It would only potentially dilute one. It would be a complicated mix. Plus, it would incentivize firefighters to leave Long Lake Fire before our contract is over, and we didn't want that because we want to be able to serve the communities that we've been serving. And the staff of the legislative staff said that unless everybody was in agreement on this, that probably was not going to be something that they were going to do. So we left there feeling like, I left there feeling at least pretty good that they're not going to be able to do that without our agreement. And we said at that time, the pension fund either belongs wholly in Long Lake or wholly in Orono, depending on what kind of agreement that we ended up with. And so they said, you guys need to go figure this out before you come back to us. Next is, in February, we sent a letter from special counsel because we felt like there had been some actions by Orno that were breaches of contract, or at least a violation of the implied covenant of good faith. And the first of those was, in spite of there being 3 more years on our contract, they hired away Long Lake's fire chief. That was number 1. Number 2 was they purchased a ladder truck that had been identified by Long Lake Fire, evaluated by Long Lake Fire Resources, and was being considered as for purchase under Long Lake Fire, and then Orno decided to buy it on their own. The third one was the Relief Association funding in years of service that I just talked about, that they tried to change. And then the fourth was that they've stated that they'll refuse to approve future capital budget or participate in any shared purchases of equipment for the duration of the contract. So that letter went out on April 25th. So you've heard some talk about the capital improvement plan budget, CIP we call it, and the fact that it's underfunded, which is true. It is underfunded, but Orno has had control of the CIP budget throughout the arrangement or the agreement that we've had. And in the early 2000s, the chief at that time requested an increase to the CIP budget due to rising costs of equipment, but he was told instead to make cuts in spending. And then a 3% increase was finally granted around 2013. That was supposed to be a 3% annual increase every year, but it was just a one-time increase. So we started out at $100,000 for the CIP budget. It bumped up to $103,000 in 2013, and then it has stayed there ever since. In 2017, a request again was made for an annual increase of 3%, and Chief Van Isle at that time cautioned that the CIP would have a negative balance if it's not corrected, but no increase occurred then either. So the question then that some might have is, how will Orno manage its fund if they have their own fire department? Either they'll continue to underfund, or if they do fund it properly, that will demonstrate that they aren't interested in supporting CIP when it's under Long Lake Fire. But I have a graph over there on the right, and you can see the blue line is where we are now. That's the 103,000. The red line represents if it was a 3% increase annually, starting in 2013, we'd be at about 135,000 a year now. If the yellow line is if we'd done a 3% increase from the start, we'd be at about 185,000. But really, we should probably be something along the lines of the green line, or maybe even higher, because cost of equipment has increased dramatically, as probably all are aware about how COVID affected supply chains in all industries. Some equipment has doubled since before COVID. So that green line actually represents 3% increase from the start, and then I just notionally I put in, what if we'd done a 5% increase starting in 2013? We'd be at about 260,000 today. So that's that. So then we recently approved some purchases, and the first was a new command vehicle, Command 1. And the reason we did that was because Orno recently rescinded their offer to loan us a Tahoe that they had purchased. In August of last year, there was a need for 2 Tahoes, 2 command vehicles. And the agreement that we came up with Orno was we'd buy one under the Long Lake Fire contract, and then Orno would buy the other one on their own, and then loan it to us. And that way, they're not left without a command vehicle in case we ended up going in different ways. But so we have the Long Lake, the one that was purchased under Long Lake Fire. That's Command 2. That's used by the duty officer. We have that under the Long Lake Fire contract. And then on April 24th, Orno decided not to offer the one that they purchased as Command One. So we then, in May, approved the purchase of a new Tahoe for Command One. Additionally, in April, we approved a new rescue slash utility vehicle, and this was to replace an older utility truck, Utility 11. And this was the highest priority on the CIP. This one has been on the CIP for several years, and it actually had gone in front of Orono in May of 2021 and June of 2022, and in both cases, it was tabled until a later date, which just never happened. So we just said enough is enough. We can't wait on Orono. We just have to be proactive and give the firefighters what they need, and so we approved that. And then the third one was something that Chief Mike and Ryan Gonzer came up with. The next highest need on our CIP is engine 11, and new engines cost about $1 million, and so that would be a tough buy rate to do right now, going it alone. But we found this really good candidate of a used truck, and that has been evaluated by the firefighters, and Mike knows it well because it comes from Excelsior, and so we authorized the purchase of that. So we'll be getting that in the first quarter of next year. And so we'll put those two, the rescue vehicle and the engine, on our CIP for 2024, and we'll put that in front of Orono because we do every year, and then they'll vote on it, and they can, if they choose to participate in it, then we will share the cost like we normally would. But if we don't, and I'm expecting that they won't, we are fully prepared to, and we're allowed to by the contract to pay for 100% of the equipment. So we'll be doing that, and then Long Lake will own those three vehicles 100%. And then in addition to that, we recently approved the lease of a number of mobile and portable radios that were identified by the chief and other firefighters as urgent need. And then looking to the future, we had the opportunity to purchase the lot next to Station 1, which we did. And that's a lot that goes from Willow to all the way to Holbrook, and it's a 1.7 acre lot. And we felt it was the thing to do because in a way it future-proofs Station 1. It makes it a viable station going into the future. We don't know what exact plans we would have for that, but you could potentially do firefighter housing, potentially do facility expansion. So we're just kind of, we saw the opportunity, we thought we'd take it. So that's part of, I guess, looking to the future. So we'll leave it there, and then Charlie, you're up next.
John, isn't it true that Orono hasn't participated in their 3% on equipment since 2017 or earlier? But they haven't, the budget stayed at 108,000.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, there is no fund that the money goes into from the cities. There probably should have been. There probably should have been set up that actual money is transferred into a fund. They're supposed to be, the cities are supposed to keep the allocations available for that. I would say that going forward, I wouldn't expect, so when I say there's 103,000, I don't expect there's 103,000, at least not Orono's part of that going forward. But I'd have to run the numbers to see. The last major purchase that we did together was a 2017 engine 22, was it? So that was the last big purchase. And so you kind of have to run the numbers to kind of see, well, did that deplete all of their allocated funding or not? But yeah, so I wouldn't say that there haven't been any big purchases since 2017. Put it that way. So.
This land acquisition was just done very recently. It was closed in this last week, so very, very fresh news here. Next slide. So let's see here. So many of you are familiar with, the city of Orono just released a draft needs assessment, or the fire department needs assessment. It was officially released May 8th at their Orono City Council meeting, and it has 4 courses of action, or COA, in it. A lot of staff time went into it, so really it's a very good detailed report, like 83 pages long or something like that. And I encourage everybody to read it if you haven't already. Many in this room have already reviewed it. We just want to address a few of the things, the way that it impacts our relationship currently with the fire department and our relationship with Orono in this situation. So they had 4 courses of action. Essentially, one was to create a fire district with, I think, 12 total cities. And it was based on a formula in which it'd be based on 100% property tax values, and the data showed that Orono residents would pay a disproportionate amount towards the fire department because the homes in Orono are, worth more than the homes in many communities around Orono. So that was not a recommended option based on that funding formula, which I'm going to get back to in a little bit. And there was, I might not have these in the right order, there was another one to essentially, acquire or I forget the word used, but the Long Lake Fire Department to continue negotiations to try to acquire the Long Lake Fire Department. And then there was 2 recommendations for creating an Orono Fire Department, and then there's sort of subsets of that. So I won't go into all the details, and Orono will be presenting that at their meeting on Monday, and they will certainly do that. But I wanted to address it, or we want to address it in the course of, or in the frame of how that impacts our fire department. And so this is the recommended course of action. It's number 4. It's their staff recommended course of action. It doesn't mean that this is one that's going to be approved when they vote here in the coming weeks, I guess, but it's just recommended. So it's to create a Orono Municipal Fire Department duty crews and full-time employees. That would include a full-time chief, which they already have, an administrative assistant, and a fire inspector. And then there'd be Monday through Friday duty crews, which based out of Station 2, I think is the main where they would mostly start that, as well as paid on-call firefighters. Next one is have special legislation written and passed in 2023 to facilitate the move of firefighter pensions from Long Lake to the Orono Relief Association. Third, Orono would assume control of Station 2 in 2024, which is well before the end of the contract. Again, the contract ends on December 31st, 2025. And I put the ones in bold, which these are ones that are really in violation of the contract that we have with the city of Orono. Third one is Orono should engage Medina and Minnetonka Beach in conversation for the Orono Fire Department to cover Minnetonka Beach. And I'll touch on that more in a second here. And then next, explore the option of moving the Station 2 service area out of the current contract. Orono needs to give notice prior to July 2023 for the 2024 budgeting cycle, and that's covered in Article 21 in the contract. That's absolutely correct. Orono has the authority to be able to, and so does Medina, to increase or decrease their fire service area. They've exercised that before. Orono has exercised that before. For example, they did that around 2017 when they asked City of Long Lake or the Long Lake Fire Department to take over coverage in northeastern Orono that it formerly would served by the Wayzata Fire Department. They instead wanted to cover by the Long Lake Fire Department. My understanding was a lot of it was to do with simplifying billing and paying one less fire department. So Long Lake Fire Department took over that service area. And then the last bullet there is they offered if there were cities contracting with them for service, so maybe it'd be Minnetonka Beach or Medina or Long Lake, what have you, there's a formula there which is based on a third property tax value, a third population, and a third call hours for contracting cities served. And that's actually a formula that we, John Dyke and I agreed on tentatively back last summer with Councilmember Seals and Johnson from Orono. If we were going to have a jointly operated fire department, that is the formula that we had worked on. So these 3 items in bold are ones that are really in violation of initial 2002, either the 2002 contract for fire protection that we have with the cities of Orono and Medina, actually. And then for those that bring Minnetonka Beach into the mix here a little bit, we have Mayor and Councilmember from Minnetonka Beach. So that's a separate contract that was signed, I believe, in 2017 with Minnetonka Beach and expires in sometime in 2028. So the City of Long Lake, hence the Long Lake Fire Department, is under contract to provide fire services to Minnetonka Beach until 2028. So under this course of action number 4, if you read that and read the bullets that are in here, which are mostly copied and pasted from that report, it talks about Orno assuming control of, and that's a kind of unique term there, but of Station 2 in 2024. And that's the station that we are based on to provide fire services to Minnetonka Beach. It's the closest fire station to Minnetonka Beach. And our contract is pretty clearly written, and there's an addendum to the contract in 2011. It was actually signed by, you see, former Mayor McMillan is here from Orno, and she signed the contract, as well as our city administrator, as well as our mayor at the time and city administrator. It's a very lawful contract. And as we go into the next slide here, that really brought us to, unfortunately, having to send a second letter from our special counsel to the city of Orem. So we sent the first letter back in April, and thank you, John. And we sent the first letter back in April, and we did receive a response from the Orem City Attorney stating we received a letter. Orem does not intend on violating the terms of the contract whatsoever. We are meeting as a city council to discuss this on May 22nd, which is next Monday, and they'll address their words to that effect. But that, I guess our first letter didn't really have its effect as we intended, because there's further, and I should say, plan breaches, or most of these haven't really happened, but they will happen if Orno chooses option number 4, which, and this is, I'm not gonna go through the entire slide here, but it really just breaks down a number of the specific violations of the addendum for Station 2 that's part of that original 2002 contract. So we really feel that what the actions, if they are to occur, would really create a public safety issue, not only for us to be able to serve Minnetonka Beach with fire service, but also to serve really, southern parts of Orno and our overall coverage area. So that letter was sent just yesterday, and I'm assuming has been received by the city of Orno, and it obviously refers to further legal action if things progress. Now we want to do, there's some, heard comments from the community that, that's a really poor negotiation tactic, or what do you, that's not going to help with negotiations. That's not what we're trying to do. This has nothing to do with negotiations. This has to do with us as a city of Long Lake being able to continue to provide fire services to the communities we serve. And we feel that the actions that Orno's been taking are beginning to jeopardize our ability to do that. And that is why we have just for those of you that aren't familiar with what attorneys and city attorneys, we have a city attorney that does great work for us. He's sitting over here tonight, John Thames. But we took the usual step of hiring an additional attorney, sort of special counsel of sorts, to look into this, who's a lot of experience in this area. Both of our attorneys are in agreement that these are breaches of our contract. So something we're taking very seriously. We hope that it doesn't lead to further legal action. It's not going to help either one of our cities. It's going to cost all of our citizens money to pay for this, but we feel that in the interest of public safety, this is really the only choice that we had. So back to Orno's needs assessment for a bit. One thing that we're really disappointed that was missing was the number one choice that Long Lake has been asking for. So in December, or January, Councilmember Dybvig mentioned we sent a letter to Orno with 2 different options in it. One was option A, which was to enter a jointly operated fire department with the city of Orno. And the second option was a financial buyout, if you will, that involved equipment in the fire station and things like that. And so our preferred option, which was A, was not listed in this document, and we're still hoping it'll be considered. But it's really based around what the good negotiations we had last summer between Orno and Long Lake council members. We came up with this concept of the fire board. John already touched on that. And made up council members from both cities, and we did at one point say that Orno could provide administrative support to the fire board, and there was HR, IT, things along those lines, but we really wanted administrative staff to be, report to the fire board. Really what we're trying to do here is exactly like Excelsior Fire District does. Instead of having any city officials or city employees working for the fire district, it's all employees of the fire district itself, and then there's representatives from each city that make up the board of the fire district. And under this number 4 there, Long Lake is willing to give up authority over the fire chief, which we've really had for 108 years, and give that more mutual control over to Orno. So that is not something that we saw in Orno's needs assessment. So I wanted to put this more in a visual context for a little more visual, get more with all the text on slides and everything. So this is really our preferred option A, and this is something we've been pushing for at least probably a year and a half or so. I know most of you have heard about this before, but this is where we are now, as far as Long Lake over here, been operating on the left side, been operating the fire department exclusively since 1915. We're the ones that are managing the fire department. And over on the right side is what Orno's desire is, which is to operate their own municipal fire department, or in some cases, as they say, take control of the Long Lake Fire Department. And all we want to do is we want to meet in the middle. We want to meet right down the middle. My pointer works there, but you get the concept. We want to meet them halfway so that we can have a mutually operated fire department with Orno. We're not trying to do something here. We're not trying to put humans on Mars or cure cancer here. We're trying to do something which would be nice, but we're trying to do something that's been done in many, many other communities, been very successful. Again, right to the south of us here, Excelsior Fire District. It's working quite well. It's 5 different cities that came together about 20 years ago to do this. And it is a very similar situation. The city of Excelsior operated the fire department for many years, provided service to surrounding communities, many of which were paying more for fire service than Excelsior was. And they came together over the course of a year or two, or around 18 months or so, and they agreed to do this. And it's been a very successful model. Their budget is way higher than ours is. They haven't had these kind of fighting over how much the CIP is, or who pays for the CIP. I heard good feedback yesterday from their field trip there, so to speak. A lot of good equipment, a lot of good resources, and they serve their community well. We are part of the Future Fire Services Planning Group that you probably heard about before. It's 11 cities or so and fire departments that meet on a regular basis. We've been meeting for a couple of years. We've had some really good discussions about what's going on in the communities around us. And we had a presentation from them, from representatives from the Excelsior Fire District, maybe 9 or 12 months ago, last summer, I believe. And it was really interesting to hear their perspective, because there's a council member there from Greenwood, and a council member from Deep Haven, for example. And Greenwood is very, very wealthy homes in Greenwood. I think some of the wealthiest, or I should say highest property values in Hennepin County. And they pay their fair of taxes, obviously. In this scenario, they actually pay a little bit more than some of the other 4 cities do in the organization. But one of the representatives or council members from Greenwood is like, I live in Greenwood, but I go to Excelsior to go to restaurants, or I go to Shorewood to watch my grandchildren playing a baseball, in a baseball field, or things like that. They go to different cities in their community, and they want to have good fire service in the cities that they're going to. They're not just focused on the fire service in their individual community. They want what's good for the overall community surrounding them. It's more of a partnership in that way. They don't see themselves as having geographical borders or walls between individual cities. And that's been a very, very good success story for them. And there's obviously, some of the reason why we hired Chief Highland, besides the fact that he was well regarded in his field and recommended by leadership in the fire department, but he comes from that background as well. So this option is the best scenario for all involved. Long Lake gives up some control. We're willing to do that. We're not on some kind of an ego trip here. We're willing to do that for the betterment of our communities. Orno gets more control. They kind of say that they don't have control, but when it really comes down to it, they do have, and when I say Orno, it's not everybody in Orno, it's really just kind of comes down to maybe about 3 council members or so. When they say these things that they don't have control, and they actually do. They have financial control over the budget and the capital improvement plans. They actually have more control than we do, ironically. Most people wouldn't think that. So we're willing to give some of that control, so to speak, up to meet them halfway on this. So who comes out ahead in this? The firefighters do. There's going to be no change, and the firefighters are not going to have to figure out, which fire department they have to go to or anything like that. Again, Orno gets more oversight. We retain partial oversight. And then the citizens come out ahead. All of you come out ahead. We're taxpayers. You're not needing to pay for your own fire department when the next city next to you has your own fire department and things like that. There's lots of savings when it comes to cost volume or volume purchasing, things like that. Obviously, firefighters are big things, sharing our firefighters amongst our communities versus having silos of firefighters in different communities. So we're really hoping that Orno is continuing, will continue to take a look at this, even though it was not one of their 4 courses of action that is in the report, but the opportunity still exists to do this, and this is really for the betterment of all of our communities. And here's just like a financial look at how this would work. Excuse me. So I mentioned before that Orno's report had this. It's actually we got this as the other Orno Lake Council members on the negotiating team. It's the League of Minnesota Cities formula, one of several they have, which is based on 33% property value, 33% population, 33% call hours. And so what our formula is now, that under the current Long Lake Fire Department contract that the Long Lake has with Orno and Medina, it's 70% property value and 30% call value. So what that does is, again, Orno has a lot of nice properties in it, a lot of nice property values, more so than Long Lake. What that equates to is that Orno pays a disproportionate amount for fire service. They're paying a higher percent because of that 70% property value, 30% call volume breakdown. So this formula from the League of Minnesota Cities there in the upper left, that's actually a more favorable formula for Orno because it reduces greatly the amount of that property tax percent that they would pay. And the other 33% is population, the other 33% is call volume. So if you look at the chart on the right, for those of you who can see that is, well, let me start at the bottom, which is the current percent that is what our cities currently pay. So you've heard this, I'm sure, many times from Orno that they pay 85% of the bill, and that's true based on this formula. Even though they only receive 72% of the service, they have about 72% of the calls. So there is a mismatch there because they're paying a larger percentage than their percent calls are. Long Lake is 10%, and then Medina is 5%, and Minnetonka Beach is based on a different contract. They pay a different amount. It's not the same formula. So when we had negotiations back last summer with our Orno counterparts, we talked about this, and Chief Van Isle at the time put together these statistics to show what this would look like if we had a partnership amongst either 3 or 4 or 5 cities. And how this would work is if we just, and this is of course depending on Minnetonka Beach, our friends at Minnetonka Beach and Medina be willing to do this, but under this formula, Orno would immediately, their percent would drop to 81%, and ours would be 13%, and Medina's would be 6%. But then if we had Minnetonka Beach in the mix, again, because they're in a different contract now, Orno would drop down to 75%, Long Lake would increase to 12%, Medina would be at 5%, and Minnetonka Beach at 7%. And the big one is if you add a 5th city in the mix. And so let's say in this example, Wayzata, and this is just an example, I'm not saying that, although we have discussions with all of our surrounding communities about the future of fire services, and there's a lot of discussions about merging. But when there's 5 cities in the mix, Orno's percent drops down to 49%. And Long Lake's is 8, 3 for Medina, 5 for Minnetonka Beach, and 34% for Wayzata. One of Orno's concerns has been that they've told us in our discussions is that they don't want to be a big percentage of the budget. They want to have a partner to share that with. So Wayzata is an example of a neighboring agency that would really drop that percent down and take the load off of what they are paying. So if you look at these percentages here, they would all, most of them would increase, or a couple of them would increase a little bit for Lund Lake. Not a huge amount, but it's enough to be worth it for us to be able to kind of continue to share those services with our surrounding communities. And Orno would really come out ahead if they were to look at this model. Now, if I was an Orno resident sitting here and I was looking at this slide, and if I were going to Orno's meeting on Monday to learn more about the needs assessment, I would, and if you're fortunate to be able to ask this question, I would ask, what have you done the numbers on this Orno? What would Orno pay using this funding formula? What would be the amount, the yearly cost of fire services? Now, I don't personally know the numbers. I don't have all of Orno's numbers. We could compute these. Try not to overwhelm you with data here, but that's a really good question as to, was this considered? There's a little bit of not an apples to apples comparison in Orno's study, because one of the courses of action was to be in a fire district with 11 different cities, but they would use that 100% property value formula, which again, like I mentioned earlier, really shot Orno's percent up. But they did not do an analysis using this formula, which would actually decrease the numbers that Orno would be paying as compared to that other formula. So that's something we'd be very interested in seeing, is what the comparison would be when it comes to that. So just a few updates, a little more updates now about what's going on around us when it comes to fire service. We did touch on this, I believe, back in the open house in November, and there's a big merger occurring to the north of us here. It's going to be official, I believe, July 1st, officially maybe June 1st in some regards, but July 1st, the newly formed West Suburban Fire District, which would be a combination of the Hamel Fire Department and Loretto Fire Department. Took them between 18 and 22 months to form. Credit goes to the Future Fire Services group that's been meeting, because we had a guest speaker there one day. His name is Todd Newcomer, and I believe he's in the room here today. He's a resident of Long Lake, and he gave a really good presentation about fire districts and what's been occurring out where his experience working in a fire district in Oregon. And the chief of, soon-to-be chief of this fire district said that after the meeting, he and the chief of Loretto, so the Hamel chief and Loretto chief, went out in the parking lot after the meeting. They said, we're going to get this done. That's enough. We've been talking about this for years. We just heard a great presentation from a gentleman who's lived this experience, who's been from a fire district, and we're going to get it done. And they did, and that's going to be occurring here shortly. So they're going to be roughly a combined 50 fire departments serving quite a few areas here, which I'll show in a future slide. So just a little geography lesson here. Most of you that were here in November saw this slide, but this is a look at fire department boundaries in our community here. And then the yellow, so that's the red lines. The yellow lines are political boundaries between cities. So this area kind of captures Medina, Independence, it gets down into Minnetrista, Mound, Excelsior way down south there, and Wayzata in the east, and of course Orno and Long Lake in the middle. And based on this map, there are 8 fire departments that serve this area. I did omit one, which is Delano, serves western part of Independence currently, but not including Delano's 8 fire departments that represent our communities. And there's the number of firefighters that serve each of those fire departments. So I talked about Loretto and Hamel, and combined they'll go be a 50 firefighter department once they combine. And so that's that's a snapshot of today. But let's look at the next slide and see what's going on here. So this is what things are going to look like in the not too distant future. So if you look to the north, you can see Medina there in the green, and that is Medina, kind of the northeast corner of the screen, and Independence and Maple Plain. So as of last week, the city of Maple Plain gave authorization for its mayor to begin negotiations with the fire chief of the West Suburban Fire District for the Maple Plain Fire Department to join the West Suburban Fire District. So that's the area in the green there. So you look at Maple Plain, Loretto, and Hamel. If it goes through, now these things take time, maybe 18 months or so, 12 months for merger discussions to occur, that could become a 74 firefighter fire department, serving all of those areas shown in the map in green. And then this has been going on for many years, but has recently resurfaced. My understanding is because of the success story with the West Suburban Fire District and Loretto and Hale merging, that has reignited discussions between Mound and St. Bonifacius fire departments to potentially merge. That is something that's been encouraged by the cities that serve them, most notably, or that they serve, most notably Minnetrista. And so if those two departments merge, that would be a 68 firefighter fire department. And down in the south, I've talked a lot about them already. Excelsior Fire District is served by 43 firefighters, and unfortunately, there's not much on the map here, but they serve 5 different cities. And then, of course, you have Long Lake at the top with our 42 firefighters, and Wayzata has 24 firefighters. And I put question marks there because none of us know what the future is here. But that's 250 firefighters when you combine all of those cities serving our areas. And hopefully you can see a theme there, because I certainly did, and it's that fire departments are merging together and they're not, I'm sure they're not doing it for no reason. They're doing it because of finances and how expensive fire engines are. They're doing it because there's a labor shortage for a wide variety of occupations, including firefighters and public safety. And they're doing it because there's strength in numbers. Many know I was a police officer. I retired last summer after 27 years as a police officer. Worked at a 60 officer police department. If I worked at a 5 or 10 officer police department, there's not going to be as many resources as there would be. There's not as much staff, not as much training opportunities, equipment, things like that. There's strength in numbers, and that's what these fire departments are seeing. So again, if I were at the Orono Council meeting on Monday as an Orono resident, another good question to ask is, when this is occurring all around Orono here, all these mergers occurring, why are we creating a brand new fire department potentially when every other city around us, for the most part, has either already merged to the south or are in discussions to merge around us? And Wayzata, I haven't mentioned much about Wayzata, but they have a report that their city commissioned and was completed a couple of years ago that mentioned that their city should look at partnering more with a neighboring fire department in some shape or form, as well as that they should hire a full-time fire chief. So that, lots going on around us here, and again, this is really all since November. Just want to give you the update. It's really, to be frank, in the last couple of weeks, a lot of this has begun to change. So in summary here, and we want to let you guys do some speaking too. Long Lake Fire Department is obviously an invaluable part of our community. The community is concerned, and none of us would disagree with that. Again, I've not heard any of the cities that we serve really give any complaints about the services provided by our fire department. All the firefighters do good. Saw a lot of you at the pancake breakfast here that they sponsored a couple weeks ago. Great event, one of many great events that our firefighters put on, and their families as well. It's not always just the firefighters, so thank you for the firefighter families for that. And we're proud of them, the services that they provide, the training that they undergo, and the dedication that they have. And what we're trying to do as Long Lake is we're not trying to empire build and things like that. We're trying to provide public safety services for our community. That's been our #1 goal as a Long Lake City Council, I feel, and the city of Long Lake in this whole ordeal is to do the best we can at that. I know this is taking a toll on our firefighters. They sign up to protect us, not to be having to worry about where their pensions are going to go or that type of thing. If they have to pick sides, this is hard on them. It's been challenging for us as well. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is look out for public safety, not only of our city but of the cities around us. We feel that since we've been operating the fire department for 108 years, we have a duty to do that. But we want to look for additional ways to partner with cities around us, with fire departments around us, because we know that it's not sustainable. We've been researching that. We've been hearing from experts in the field, in the community, and State Fire Marshal's office that they are encouraging consolidation and partnerships. And we're obviously trying to keep costs under control as well. Very expensive to buy equipment these days. That fancy looking pickup truck that has the giant wheels that I've been promised I can get a chance to drive once it comes in. That was I think $205,000 or something like These things are not cheap, and they take a long time to get. And so we'd love to see a solution. Again, we're still hopeful that Orono will come back to the table and be willing to compromise with us and meet us halfway on some of these things. We are open for that. There's a handout that we had at the entrance here. If I didn't grab one, please do on your way out. Have these printed. It's a claim versus fact sheet, the way we kind of frame this. And there's a number of items on both sides. And these are things that we've been kind of hearing about, either from Orono or maybe in the community, or maybe misunderstandings over the last year or so. And we put this together as our city council and staff. We try to be as diligent as possible to ensure that everything in here is completely factual. If something comes up, you think it's not factual, please reach out to me or somebody else, let me know. We'll drill down and give you an answer on it. But a lot of good information here that, again, if you're maybe going to Orono's meeting on Monday, have this in your hand, take a look at it. As you're hearing some of the things, you can maybe kind of do some checking here and see what kind of information is on the sheet, because we try to cover as many bases as we could. And I forgot to, that's the slide I wanted to do for that, but you get the picture, that's what it looks like. And then lastly, this is our website. So we just actually created a new page on our website a couple of days ago, kind of cleaned it up a bit, but the red tab there, that's really everything, not everything, but quite a bit you need to know and you should be aware of when it comes to this whole situation. We posted most of the documents that have been involved in this situation there, whether it's letters that we've sent to Orono or letters Orono has sent to us. Our new letters are in there that our legal counsel has sent to Orono, and things along those lines. So it's kind of one-stop shopping. As Long Lake, we're trying to be as transparent as we can. We don't have anything to hide when it comes to the situation, so we're trying to put as much information out there as we can so that folks can take a look at it and draw their own conclusions on things. So that is our presentation, and we're going to turn it over to you now. If anybody has any Thank you. These all will, we're saying 3 minutes. If you go over a minute or two, that's fine. We didn't bring a gavel or anything tonight, so we're going to keep it a little more casual. We'll just try to ask to be respectful in case there's a big group that wants to speak, but maybe, who knows, maybe we answer all the questions. There's no question, but I feel like there isn't. There will be some, but if you can give your name and address in the city, please, like you do in a normal council meeting. And we do have a microphone over there, and yes, just be courteous. And again, this is, it might be on TV, so be aware of that. And we're not making any decisions tonight. We're just love to don't go away now, Brian. We're trying to get feedback. All right, go ahead, sir.
All right. Don't start the clock yet, but do have your gavel ready. I just want to provide a little bit of a perspective I haven't heard talked about yet. That means something to me, and I think a majority of the people in Long Lake. My name is Brian Miller. I live at 295 Lakeview Avenue. I am not a native of Long Lake, but I've lived right here in this community for 61 years, including the city of Orono at one time. You know who else has been here for a long time? Long Lake's Mayor Charlie Meyer, born and raised in Orono. So he has some valuable insight for the history of this community. About 30 years prior to Orono, Long Lake first established in 1855. Long Lake has been a hub for the community, beginning with a sawmill, a general store, a flour mill, a free thinkers hall, and a schoolhouse. That schoolhouse is still out here today and now called the West Hennepin Pioneer Museum. Long Lake founded their fire department in 1950, hereinafter referred to as LLFD. The families of many founding members of Long Lake still live here today. Many of their homes still exist in Long Lake. Many of those families served on LLFD throughout the years. Samuel Rettinger founded the LLFD, and his grandchildren are my friends and neighbors. My current home was built by founding members of Long Lake, the Gaspars and the Gerbers. They owned it until 1987. They are buried on top of the hill at Union Cemetery on Long Lake. Long Lake first expanded, skip that part. Long Lake has expanded LLFD out of necessity for the community. They could have just stayed in their own city, but that's not what people do with police and fire who trust their surrounding communities. Working with the cities of Medina, Minnetonka, Beach, and Orono, the fire department has grown. When MnDOT forced the Super 2 to run through Long Lake, the LLFD station had to move. Out of necessity for the community, Orono and Long Lake agreed to move Station 1 to its current location on Willow Drive. Out of necessity, the community has historically worked together to make LLFD better. So does that mean the current regime in Orono should take over LLFD and strip it Long Lake of its long history, pride, and dignity? No. The best thing to do is to continue to work together with all the communities for a sustainable fire district that is proven to be cost effective as you can get. Nobody is starting a new fire department, especially where one already exists. Argument. Since November of last year, Orono residents have begun to ask Orono officials questions such as why are we starting our own fire department? Is the current system broken? What is our fire department going to cost? What are you going to do with the ladder truck, command vehicles, and fire chief that you have already purchased until your term with LLD is up? By the way, Orono is currently paying 2 fire chiefs until the end of 2025. And you know what? Not one Orono official has answered those questions other than to say, now we'll do a needs assessment. No decisions have been made yet. Really? No decisions have been made? That's your response, Orono. After you already started the Orono Fire Department, you've already decided that you have spent the money at the expense of Orono taxpayers without an actual plan. And if anyone has not witnessed the actions and inactions of the current Orono mayor, they need only Google Orono Mayor Walsh /news and watch the Orono council meetings online over the past year, where the mayor and some council members berate and belittle not only Orono residents themselves, but members of the community and now their newest fellow council member, who, by the way, won the majority vote in the last election. These Orono meetings are painful, shameful, childish, and embarrassing to witness. This entire posturing of the Orono regime is clearly a ruse. It's irresponsible and unacceptable. And anyone who thinks Orono officials are folks we should follow into the future, think again. I'll leave any professionalism and niceties to the Long Lake officials to negotiate with Orono. But from a longtime resident perspective, I am pissed off.
I'm Gabriel Jabor. I'm sorry to rush up here, but I have limited time besides your 3 minutes, which is going to be stretched a little bit. For those who know me, I've been here 52 years. My daughter is 5th generation Orono resident from her mother's side. I think the mayor went to school with her. I was extremely instrumental to reunite Orono Long Lake after a decade of litigation. And actually, I left office in 2000 because there was a lot of question, why are we putting these 2 cities together? Put them on the ballot for merger. Subsequently, after that, me and Mike Bash worked heavily on Highway 12 and redoing all the services that are provided to us by both cities. And you, Mr. Mayor, council member, were put in quick condemnation, 90 days, and offered $360,000 for your facility. I think one of the council members who went with me to MnDOT is here. Mayor Schaefer, I suggested to her that I could go negotiate it if something goes wrong. Who am I? I'm neither an elected official nor I represent Long Lake. We got $7.2 million, and that's how that station was built. Orono did not spend $1 for that station. They got 50% ownership with the promise that we will get the second ownership and they will get 50, you will get 50%.
At the time, we had a little bit confusion about how to proceed forward, which resulted with the present contract. We were a customer. For example, Maple Plain did not bill us for 4 years, and the bill was $18,000 for 4 years. So what happened, we decided that things are changing. As you know, engines are hundreds, thousands of dollars, and now millions. City, we built a facility, Maple Plain wanted to build a facility, Mount wanted to build a facility. We were 28% of the budget, 18 calls out of 380. So we had to pay 28% of the building. Same was Mount. Why is Long Orno have the highest cost and highest percentage of operating? Is because Long Leg saved our tail. You took us and allowed our citizens for the last decade to save millions of dollars by moving from 28% budget, 30-some% budget, because it's all based on value, to a very small amount of money to you. Why Orno paying more? I understood all along why. It's because we need special equipment. We need pumpers. We need tankers. Rick Perry and Mike, God bless him, I forgot his name. Brown, my friend that I forgot his name, used to go to Meyer Brothers and buy old milk tankers for $5,000 and turn them into tankers. Those days are over, so we said, do you want us as a customer or do you want us as a partner? A customer to us what it'll cost, like Minnetonka Beach, and we decide to buy it from you or them. We decided to partner with the understanding that we'll descend to a bigger picture in the future. Same thing happened. We went to Excelsior. Excelsior covered us in Station 2 for 2 years. They bailed us out. This bookkeeping story with Wayzata, yeah. Bookkeeping is very difficult for cities. And that's, you took us again. So we dominating the cost because you saved us. I understood that. Now, when Orno and Long Leg were litigating over annexation, by the way, I showed up at the station site every single day during construction, both of them, and made sure that some of our friends in the community built it very, very expensive, because the firefighter wanted to spend $5 million, and that didn't happen. We written a check back to the cities for that, for the balance. Now, I personally feel very bad for the firefighter. This is like a family having a stuck between the father and the mother. One day they're feeling really good about the father because they went to a ball game. Next day they're feeling really good about the mother. And maybe they learn how to play them against each other. Now, but I could tell you, we know what Long Leg have in shortcoming. They don't know what Orno have in shortcoming. I tell you that firsthand. I went and talked to all the presidents of the fire districts from Excelsior all around the area, and they told me after they looked at all of that, that the model that we're trying to build is 1950 model. The new model is consolidation of fire district. And they told me, and you could talk to them privately, I don't have their permission to tell you that what we're getting, we should be grateful for the value we're getting for it. Now, having enough critical mass is essential, and fragmenting the district a little more is inappropriate. And for all the audience, to the best of my knowledge, 100% of the living mayors signed a petition asking the council, 100 on both sides. Both sides not to have this happen. And I warn you guys, you are in the honeymoon period. Wait until 10 months, and there's a very good chance there's going to be a new election, and this council will not be here. And I wish to God that happens. And I wish to God that happens. We could have been talking, we forgot, we're standing on the shoulders of great people. Honor what it is, because people like the Pillsbury, Medina, like Tom Crosby, those people made us who we are, and we should remember where we came from.
Hold it shorter, sorry. Maria Beach, 1065 Willow View Drive. I want to, first a question. When you said these are claims by Orno, and then you said these were rumblings in the crowd, what is this? Claims from Orno or rumblings that you've been hearing?
So there's really some of both. I mean, you have to go through all of them, but there's a combination of both.
So it is not just, thank you, just wanted to confirm after that. I guess I had two things, and I'm going to try to abide by the 3 minutes here. When you say jointly operated, would you consider jointly operated with a percent ownership tied to funding? So whatever your funding percent would be your ownership percent. Would you still call that jointly operated? What?
The current contract has the ownership of like individuals. Equipment or?
As the department, yeah, as the department. So as decision-making, as ownership of the department, not just assets. Has that ever been discussed?
Splitting up the assets of the department.
Just saying your percent that you fund could be tied to, so if you pay, or if you're funding 80%, you get 80% ownership. If you get, and maybe you split Medina since Medina doesn't want in on it. Would you consider that part of that compromise?
That's how it is now. I mean, we share equipment percentage, so 80, Orno owns 85% of a lot of the equipment.
Right, I'm saying of the department though. So if you pay for that, would you just, of the department, not the asset?
So what do you mean?
Right? The decision making. So you'd have 80% vote at the table versus the, and
The contract currently requires, for example, in capital improvement budget, 60% of the cities have to approve it. Orno's 85%, that means they have control over the budgeting from that. So in other words, Medina and Long Lake can't force a budget on Orno. Orno has full legal power.
got it. Okay. And then I guess the last thing I had a question on was it correct, last summer was the last time there was negotiation between, like, sat down at a table? Is that what you said?
We met again in December, I think. Yeah, and then we tried to get together, we've asked to get together, the response is that until they do the needs assessment, they're not gonna meet with us.
All right, is there anything that people of the community could do? Because I think like that last analogy of the parents is quite, I mean, really good. And it's uncomfortable because my parents taught me don't fight in front of the kids, like that is behind closed doors. And I think it's been quite a drain on the community, and the firefighter and the firefighter families, and an embarrassment, I think, to both cities, with the press that we've been getting. Is there any way that mom or dad could say, yeah, I hear you, but this is important, and I am going to keep saying that, and say my table is open, come join me, until someone comes to join you?
Jim Elder, 195 South Brown Road, Orno, retired firefighter. I think I can address your comment, because my comments, which I've written all day, and now I don't think they're relevant. I start with a comment of what's a stakeholder, and all the stakeholders are here. They're the firefighters, you're the core asset of the fire department, they're the citizens whose safety is being served by the fire department, and the taxpayers are going to pay for it. You're all here. And how are we going to get the impasse between the two cities, one city I think is quite open and transparent, the other isn't. How are we going to apply pressure to these immovable objects? I think the only way we can do it is you, the stakeholders, all three of you. You need to apply some pressure. You need to call your representatives. Most of these comments are directed to the other party, frankly. And I'm an Orono resident, and I'm not too sure that they listen. But let's let them hear us. Call them, write them, and tell them that this is embarrassing, it's dysfunctional, and it's not serving us, the stakeholders. This needs assessment is sort of a sham. There are so many questions that are raised by it and no answers. And so the meeting Monday night, fill the place up. Submit your questions, although you're not sure they will, answer them. They're going to be filtered out, I'm afraid. But ask them anyway. And I was going to tell you that I've given up. I've told Charlie that if I feel like Sisyphus trying to roll that damn rock up the hill. And every time I think I've got something, and I think when Mr. Dydek thinks he's got an agreement, it goes to the mayor, Walsh, and it doesn't go anywhere. And I don't know how we can apply any pressure there. But we've got to try. Otherwise, we're doomed, and Orono's going to build a redundant fire department, and Long Lake's going to go join the West Suburban Metro, which I don't blame you. But that just means me as a taxpayer is going to have to pay for the damn fire department. We don't need. So apply your pressure. You are a stakeholder, and you have a right to make them listen to you. And incidentally, if we do nothing, if we can stymie Orono and prevent them either through lawsuits or something stalled until the next election, maybe wise minds can get together and we can close this gap. In the meantime, Long Lake Fire Department is not broken. It never was. This whole exercise of fixing it, I think, is misguided. So I take some confidence and pleasure in knowing that the fire department is working. It's working well. So we aren't going to be out on a limb if we make no decisions. A bad decision is better than no decision is better than a bad decision.
Hi, my name is Kelly Grady. I am 271 Green Lane in Long Lake. I am a fire wife, so I've been part of the Long Lake Fire family for some time. I wrote something that I posted on Facebook, and I just thought it would be worth reading. The last time that you had this event was in November, and I spoke at that event as well. And since then, what I've been referring to as the tug of war between for the fire department between the city of Long Lake and the city of Orono is ongoing. And since then, I have dedicated an embarrassing amount of hours to having conversations with council members, current and former firefighters, fire families, and community members. From what I have gathered, there seems to be a fundamental lack of understanding of what the problem is that we're trying to solve, which Jim just touched on. Even people in the know during this presentation, and I've spoken with people on the Orono Council as well, have a really hard time putting their finger on any specific issues that would lead to some of the drastic changes that are being proposed. But what I have heard repeatedly, and even here in this tonight, is that there is an overwhelming concern that this is about control and not actually about improving public safety. Additionally, that the responsibility for the situation that we are in, the stalled negotiations and the need for updated equipment and upgraded facilities is shared between the two cities and the leadership of the fire department over the last many decades. I am very hopeful for a solution that moves towards strengthening the high-functioning, well-respected public safety asset that has probably served this community for over 100 years, and away from burning down an institution and this department and starting from scratch. This is the best option for the community, the taxpayers, and for the firefighters. We know that because we have all been living it for all of our lives. I will say that as a fire wife and a member of this community for a very long time, I love James. He has been a member of my family, but I will say to him, and I will say to council and to everyone, that I was very disappointed to see that the option to go back to the negotiating table is not in the fire needs assessment, which you did point out tonight. I'm gonna go over just very, very small, not a whole lot, I promise. I was very, very disappointed to see that, largely because I don't think you would find a firefighter that didn't support James in his transfer to Orono's, as Orono Fire Chief, because he's backed up against a wall, frankly, just the way that many of them feel. But any fire assessment that goes towards against their wishes, which I would encourage everybody to go back and listen to the statement that Ben made at the November meeting that goes against the wishes of the fire department, which is to maintain to stay together, and under whose leadership they just don't care, but to stay together so that they can continue to provide the level of service that they have been providing is simply unacceptable, and it feels horrible, I will say, that that wasn't part of the assessment, in my opinion. It's my belief that because we cannot seem to understand what the problems are, and because there really, although this is good, there is no really ample forum, in my opinion, with Orono that allows citizens to ask questions in a way that's more of an open dialogue. That many of the irrevocably, the changes that will irrevocably change the existing department will drastically impact fire service, but also the taxpayers' pocketbooks. I have put together a list of questions. I feel that this issue is so complicated and that people just really don't understand really, like, here are some of the bullet points that you should be asking about. I'm not telling you you should adhere to my opinion, but these are some of the questions you should be asking your council members. And I have created a list of 30-ish questions that if anybody would like for me to send to them, I would be happy to do so. I'll be here all night. Thank you so much.
Site E2874 Casco Point Road, Orono. And you guys have such a nice forum. You are, open. You lay out all the information. This is not what happens in Orono. And there's 3 things that I think they've forgotten. Number 1, when you start a new fire department, you're telling every insurance company that you've got an unproven service. You watch all the rates your homeowners and business insurance are going to skyrocket. That's number 1. Number 2, like I said, the feeling here is much more like a civic forum. I mean, you're accessible. And number 3, Mayor Walsh is serving by his own appointment. They say that the staff suggested that he take a 4-year term, but he was part of the group that approved it, and so he wasn't elected. So that's the way somebody was saying, how do we get, how do we stop this? Because he makes all the decisions without any, he doesn't answer any questions.
Accountability.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Carswell, 261 Signet, Orono, so I'm speaking to Orono here. First of all, thank you for having us and having an open forum. I just want to build on Jim's comments that the people here are the people that care, and I think, Kelly, you're right on, there's no problem. But I think what's going to happen now is there's risks that are popping up. I feel like there's no financial acumen or diligence put to place with what Orono has to do. The second risk is I think they're over their skis in doing this on their own. And the third risk is they're not going to invite any future collaboration and trust as we try to do something in the future. So as you think about showing up, those are the things I would focus on and pick the one that you're most comfortable with and really speak at the meeting next Monday. Thank you very much.
Dave Pearson, 2160 Weber Hills Road in Orono. But full disclosure, I'm 17-year through marriage, Orono resident, but I was a 9-year resident of Long Lake, served on your council, and had the immense pleasure to deal with Gabriel Jabor on the contract and the fire station. That was an exercise in, how would I say it? It was a very interesting exercise, and I enjoyed every minute of it, even though I think at one meeting they said, that's it, we're gone, we're leaving. And, but I have since gotten to know him a little bit, and what he says is true. What I wanted to point out is that I got involved in this fairly recently in Orono, because when I heard that a year and a half ago, Orono had voted on having their own fire department. And unlike Long Lake, I questioned and I said, well, isn't this worthy of a public forum? So we can know the why, the cost of the taxpayer, and what the alternatives are. And in that time, there's been a number of people who probably in this room who followed that up and kept asking for a public forum. Just let us know what's going on. And it was refused every time. But I think we must have made a heck of an impression, because just yesterday, and you may have gotten it too, or sure the Orono people did, we got a card telling us about this great meeting on Monday that we're going to have, and you can ask all the questions you want, and except they got to go on a card. And the card's going to go to the mayor, and the mayor's going to choose the questions, and the mayor only wants to do it for an hour. Okay, so it's all about control, which we heard earlier, but it is imperative that who's ever listening to this, the people here, to the previous speaker, you need to show up on Monday. Because what has happened is, rather than do a public forum, my impression is, having gone to all these meetings, he's doing it under public comments. He or the council have no obligation to respond to whatever questions you ask. So I don't want to say that as a negative, to say that, well, I guess it's over, what the heck, I'm not going. Exactly the opposite has to happen, because they can listen to your questions and they'll just move on and do whatever they want to do. And I don't know the numbers, because they won't give us the numbers. There are some people in the room that might know some of the numbers, but the numbers are going to be, in my impression, big for the Orono residents. If you're going to try to put the fire department together, you're going to try to put a full paid fire department together at some point. You're going to buy the equipment. And by the way, you're going to spend, I don't know, $5 to $8, $10 million on a fire station that's a half mile from Station 1. Makes no sense. So you need to be involved. You need to show up civil. Just there's a tendency at the Orono meetings to get a little loud and a little rambunctious, and it is really upsetting to the point that sometimes I have to even leave the meetings. But if we have a big group, it's the only way that we're going to show how we feel about this, and that if there's any way as a public that we can delay this thing until the election, that is the only way, currently, that is the only way we're going to have any ability to control what happens between Long Lake and Orono. So all ideas are great, and they need to come forward, but your voice needs to be heard. And I finally want to say what a pleasure it has been to work and talk to the Long Lake City Council. That's how it's supposed to run, not the way it's running in Orono. So I congratulate you and I thank you.
Krista Burbank, 80 Valley View Road, Long Lake. I live across the grass from the home I grew up in, 50 Valley View Road, Long Lake. So I've been in the area 41 years. And my husband has served on the fire department for about 9 of those since we got married. In fact, I'll try to only take my 3 minutes, but in fact, DJ rolled up at our wedding, which was in this very church, with an engine. And so we have fire pictures with an engine, and I think he was like 5 days on the department old or something like that. So anyway, it is really impacting us as fire families to the point where I think the men and women on the department are starting to go like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're not going to separate, and Kelly alluded to that. But I think the point I want to make is, and the gentleman who just spoke kind of alluded to it, but there is an election in November, and I'm in Long Lake, and I can only vote for those elected officials in Long Lake, but I do think there are things that can be done between now and November in regards to the election, because there's no, as we know, we live in the best country in God's green earth, and that's because we have a say via our elections. And so I think there's no way to speak louder to an elected official than to start talking to them about, this is an issue that will change my vote. This is an issue that will change my vote in November. I think that message needs to start going out right now. And I speak from Long Lake to Orono, but also to Long Lake. I guess as Long Lake citizens, we need to be saying the same thing. This is an issue that is going to change my vote in November. That is going to get some ears to start opening up. So that would be my 2 cents.
Cody Farley, I live at 328 DuPont Street here in Long Lake. I am a 16, 17-ish member of the Long Lake Fire Department. However, I stand up here tonight as not a representative of that organization, nor a representative of the Long Lake Fire Relief Association, but just as a citizen who happens to serve in that capacity. We have a great department. A really, really great department. This community, for 100+ years, has asked the citizens of this community to stand up and support it in this manner, to provide professional fire service for the rest of our citizens. And these citizens have done it, and they're doing great. We've been recognized by communities, neighboring communities, fire departments, Orono and Wayzata, North Memorial, for the excellent job that they do every day serving that need. And that's awesome. That is so great, and because of that, it is also very painful to watch these two cities squabble over us, the children, in this messy divorce. And it is hard. It's really difficult. And that troubles me. That keeps me up at night to know that there are good people out there who want to do good for their community, and it does perceive that their community is having a hard time doing good for them. But at the heart of it, I know that you do want to do good. And at the heart of it, I think that Orono does want to do good for the firefighters and its citizens, and maybe even the citizens of Long Lake too along the way. And they should, because the institution that has served them for the past however many years has been built on the backs of residents of not just Long Lake, but of Orono as well, and Maple Plain as well, and Minnetonka Beach as well, and Mound as well. The Long Lake Fire Department has been served by citizens of all of these communities. And really what we want to do at the end of the day is continue to serve these communities. I don't like the idea of Orono starting their own fire department and me potentially serving on that fire department. I don't like the idea of Long Lake having to start over and build a new fire department, nor do I like the idea of me serving on a Long Lake fire department that only serves the city of Long Lake. I love the idea of serving on a department that serves the community that we all enjoy, right? We don't live in bubbles. We don't live in the Long Lake bubble or an Orono bubble. We live in a community. We're in and out of each other's community all the time. And there's no reason we can't serve in that same capacity. You know, the reason that the paid-on-call fire model works, you know, any given emergency requires sometimes 4 firefighters, sometimes a dozen, but most often it's not very many. But we are a dedicated community of 42 firefighters, right? And it works because we do it together. It takes people, it takes a larger effort to make it work. And the same thing exists in the fire service as a whole, and the whole country knows that. It's no secret. The entire fire industry is moving in a direction, just like you were talking about. Consolidation, combined efforts, combined forces, do more together because it makes sense at every single level. And trying to peel yourself off and create a silo of a department in one area just simply doesn't make sense anymore. And I really do hope that the citizens of Orono can speak that truth to their council, and they can come back to the table, and Long Lake can come back to the table as well to work together to build a strong partnership that the rest of our neighbors also want to be a part of. You know, Hamel and Loretto, let's get on board with them. Wayzata, let's get on board. Let's put them all together. That's the kind of fire service that I want to be a part of and that I want to serve for. So let's make that happen, but it does. It'll take us. It's going to take us to say this over and over again and say it louder and louder and louder until 10 representatives and their city administrators finally feel that way and push them down that road. So I hope we can make that happen. Thank you.
Happy birthday, yes.
For a guy that only gets about 2 calls a day, I sit in the audience and my phone keeps going off and off and off and off. I keep ignoring my children and my grandchildren. But anyways, I would like to thank everybody for, I did get a lot of birthday wishes, both from James, who I was lucky enough to serve with for 15 years, and from Charlie, and from quite a few firefighters, so I do appreciate that. I get up here more just, by the way, I'm Kelly Shaughnessy. I go back a little ways with the fire department. I remember when I first got on back in 1976, I was pretty much forced on the department by my dad, who had been on for 21 years, and I served for 46, but the point is that I grew up, at a time when it was World War II guys, and that was it, just World War II guys who made up the Long Lake Fire Department. They had a great life. The fire station was here, the liquor store was here, the city hall was there. They couldn't ask for anything better, but I watched these guys, I watched them work, and they were a cohesive unit because they all had that shared experience. I came through with that next stage, and it was some of the people you heard about, Brown and Becker and Lyle Day and Rick Perry, some of my closest friends. And we brought our kids up. We were a cohesive unit. As we got off, I took a little longer than some, but as we got off, I watched this new group come in that we have today, which I look at and I see the same thing. They're young, they're 40-ish, they're bringing their kids up. It's a strong, strong department. And a lot of that, goes to the leadership that was there and the leadership that was here now. And I just want to say that it's a great department. Staying together is the utmost. I'm frustrated like everybody else because it's my history. It hits home very deeply. So, with Memorial Day coming up and everything else, I just reiterate what people have said. Get out, express your opinion, let people know how you feel, what you want. I don't think there's that many people that really feel that we want to split this thing up. We are our community. Gabe got up here earlier, and I was third in command for way too many years. I was always smart enough not to run for chief, by the way, because the idea of family, that goes way out if you're going to do that. So, but I was in command, and he reiterated about Long Lake saving Orono's ass, but really, I remember those situations. They came to us and said, we want you to take over this area and Maple Plain, and we're going, why? Maple Plain serves that area better than we do. You're asking us to cover people that are 2 miles from their door? Why do you want us to do that? We reluctantly took it over. Why? Because it was money. Same thing with Mound. They came to us and they said, we want you to take over Mound. We said, no, Mound's serving Navarre in that area better than we could. Because, and we're not saying that we were bad at Pahrump, we're saying the location, their location is there, they can get there. It's one thing when your house is burning down, it's a whole nother thing when somebody's dying of a heart attack. You know, some things are replaced, some things can't. So we said no again. And they finally came back to us and said, we're going to Excelsior. Matter of fact, it's a little too late. We've already gone to Excelsior. But if you want to come in 2 years, we'll have them just train. And that's a little bit of what gave us out. That was how that decision was made. They had already gone to Excelsior for a period of 2 years. I remember well because I was in charge of the Relief Association, and all of our relief money went to Excelsior's fire department. We got all the liability for those guys though for the 2 years on our department, even though it probably should have gone that way, but that's the way that was set up. So we've got a great department, you've got great leadership, you've got great people, both under James. I've gotten to know Mike a little bit too, and I think they have good leadership now also, and the officers are the same. So support these guys. And get up and talk. That's all I can really say. Thanks.
Anybody else want to? We're supposed to be done by 8:30, so all right.
Lisa Benson. I'm a member of Orono City Council, as many of you in this room likely know. The thing is, I've been a resident of Orono for 15 years, which is a lot longer than my service to the city of Orono as a council member. And it's really with that hat that I do think about fire service, as well as a council member these days. And the reality is, as a member of the community for 15 years, most of my life here has not been serving as a city council member, and for most of those years, like many people in our community, I didn't have to think about fire service. It was provided. And when I needed service, which I have, as many people in this room have over the years, I would call and they came. And that's about as much thought as a resident that I had to put into Long Lake Fire, because it's stellar service. It was when I moved into town, and I believe it still is. Now that I'm on city council, I think about fire all the time, every day, as many people in this room do. And I know because I've been hearing it, and I've spoken with many people in this room. I hope to speak with many more, and I thank this council in Long Lake, Mayor Minor, for putting on this forum. I disagreed with my fellow council members at our last meeting about the opportunity that we're giving our residents this time in the city of Orono to be able to speak to council, to be able to speak freely to our council, to be able to share their concerns and ask questions in an open way like this. I think it's incredibly important. So my learning curve as a new council member has been steep, and fire service is one of those issues that's made it steep. I've been learning a lot though, and I learn more from the community and the people in it every day. I've learned about the ideas of control and community, and those are words that I think have come up a lot. And I know that control in life is important, and I believe it's especially important when fighting fires. You need to control a fire. And I'm not a firefighter, but I imagine things like oxygen and fuel come into play when you're trying to control a burn. Community is something different. And I think fire service is more about community than it is about control. And what I've heard here tonight in this forum, as well as at the city council meetings in Orono, is folks talking about community, the importance of community. Community is why I ran for city council. It was the idea of wanting to serve the people that I live and work around. And I will tell you, having campaigned last fall, it's hard to tell sometimes when you're in Long Lake and Orono, because when you drive a little bit one way or the other, you're gonna be in both again and again and again, this way and that. Our communities are inextricably linked, and that's important. So I don't want to take any more time tonight. I just want to thank you again for holding this forum, and thanks to all the council members of Long Lake and surrounding communities who have come here. Thanks to the firefighters and their families. Thanks to both chiefs in the room. And thanks to all the community members for showing up and continuing to spend time sharing your opinions and your concerns and questions with me and the rest of the Orono City Council. It matters a great deal to me, so thank you all.
Most of you know me, I'm Jay Nygaard, Orono, Long Lake, part of the community. We had a great history lesson today from Gabriel, and I was actually a part of that. I was on the Orono Council years ago when we voted to open the Navarro station and start with that. And from what I remember about that, and this is a lesson that the Orono Council really needs to understand right now. The whole reason we walked away from the Mountain Fire Department at that point was because of all the money they were expecting out of us to build their Tajima Fire Hall. And we're like, this is ridiculous, we can't go along with this, the service is good enough, let's try to make improvements and move on. And Mount would have nothing of it. They had to build their fire hall, and they did. And it's a beautiful fire hall. The only problem with Mount right now is where's their police department? It's gone. Why? Because they can't afford it anymore, because they had this big fire department that they had to keep paying for. And that's the road we're going down in Orono right now. We got an $18 million public works building that was supposed to be $8 million or something like that. And now we're trying to build a fire department, and Mayor Walsh has no idea what he's doing. How are we gonna pay for it? How much is it gonna cost? Well, it's his intuition, how much this is gonna cost. He has no idea that a fire department has so many more requirements than a public works building. It's gonna cost that much more money, and he's only gonna saddle us with it. Now, what do we get? We don't get this. We don't get a chance to come up and voice our opinion. What do we get? We get this. A silly little postcard. I know damn well if I wrote anything in there, it would be shit can faster than toilet paper in that building. Period. And that's what they're doing to us. And that's what they're doing to us financially. It's ridiculous. And I'm going to say to everybody here, this is beyond Orono. This is not the Orono residents' ability. Everybody affected by this fire department has to speak up and say it's wrong. The Long Lake Fire Department is the way to go. All the communities have to come together. This isn't just on Orono.
Talking to her along the road, I've spoken at numerous city council meetings and numerous events. I tonight, raise your hand if you're a firefighter. Okay, real quick, before we go anywhere, thank you for your service. And you guys have my apology. I am not from this area, I'm brand new to this area, but I have a long service in the fire department. And things on the West Coast burn the same way. Heart attacks occur the same way, strokes occur the same way, people die. So I know what it's like. I know what sticky gloves from blood are like. And I know what getting on a saggy roof is like to the bed. The people in this community don't know what those things are like. They're missing a lot of that. Not missing it. Not missing it at all. But we owe you a lot. Cody, you spoke quite a bit about the term I kept hearing you say was service, service, service. The one thing both these communities, Long Lake and Orono, what we need to do, we need to provide the service to these folks, the men and women who protect all the communities in the area. It isn't fire trucks that put out fires. It's not fire engines that put out fires. Or big trucks with wheels that you want to drive. It's not even buildings. Those are just things. You folks do it for us, voluntarily. And we owe you a debt of gratitude, and we need to show that gratitude by giving you the tools that funding, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, Long Lake, Orono, the entire state, we need to increase the funding for the fire department so they can do the job that they volunteered and are willing to do. Right now, if you guys wanted to put a stop to this, you could. Just say, you know, we're done. We're in trouble, a lot of trouble. So you guys are in the driver's seat, you as a group are in the driver's seat. Tell the people, tell the elected officials, tell your neighbors what you need, what you want, and those of us who care will be here to serve you while you serve us.
All right, so we're coming up to the end of our time here. Thank you for your comments. I just want to make one comment, and then Charlie will close it out. And to Elisa's point, you're right. We are a linked community. I mean, I talk to some people sometimes who don't even know what city they live in. They think they live in Long Lake because it's Long Lake Postal, but I said, no, you're in Orono. That's who you're paying your taxes to. So, I mean, we are a community. And I just wanted to respond to, there were some questions and comments regarding negotiations, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but from last June through September, Charlie and I were meeting about weekly with Victoria Seals and Matt Johnson, who are the negotiating team from Orono, and often up to 3 hours at a time. And you know, at first I felt like we were spinning our wheels, we weren't getting very far, but then midway through it, I felt like we were starting to get to know each other, and actually I would tell our council, and I told Matt and Victoria, I said, I enjoy these times. I mean, we're getting to know each other's cities. I was kind of hoping that maybe there would be like bridges built or whatever, and then we said, okay, well, what do we agree on? And we started, this is midway through the summer, and we came up with a list of tenets, and actually these tenets were pretty much the 4-city JPA independent fire board model and all of that. And you know, Victoria was on board with that, and Matt was a little bit more hesitant, but he said at the time, he said, if I can get a third Orono council member to buy into that, he'd support it, but at the time, you know, he wouldn't. So, and then, but still, we were, you know, we'd spar sometimes, we'd laugh sometimes, and I really enjoyed it. And it went through September, and I was thinking, we were talking like, wow, we gotta get this figured out by December, you know, so that I thought we had some time. And then the mayor cut it off mid-September, and then they just did a straight buyout offer. And but we did meet after that, I think a couple of times, Charlie, if I'm not mistaken, and still kind of got together, talked. And then, you know, when we did our counteroffer in January, I said, hey, let's talk about our counteroffer. There were some, even through the winter, there were some firefighters proposals, you know, that came about that kind of just were sort of organically created. And I said, let's get together and talk about those. I mean, let's just keep talking. And you know, the response then was, no, we need to get through the needs assessment. But I will say that I'm open to going back to that, to you know, resuming those talks and getting to know each other and trying to do what's best for the community. So I'm hoping that we will return to that. And then we'll let Charlie close it out. Thanks, John.
We'll wrap it up here. We need to be out the door by 9, but thank you again to Calvin Presbyterian for hosting this event. And just a few points that kind of came out of some of the comments. Great comments. Again, we really appreciate you coming out. We you know, we take away a lot of this as a help in our decision making now, and so you're not. And feel free to come. You know, our Long Lake Council meetings are kind of probably not very exciting in some days, but in most days actually. But come there.
You guys make it fun.
As well, and sit in the crowd and ask questions, or speak in our public comments. Mediation, and that came up, somebody suggested that at our last council meeting, or two meetings ago, excuse me, and we sat down to mediate with Orono. And just to focus on, there's arbitration, where an arbitrator is like a judge, they rule, all right, this is my decision, and you gotta live with it. And there's mediation, and that's like, it's almost like, you know, marriage counseling or something, where both sides get together and they have a mediator in the middle that helps try to resolve the situation. And I've tried to work that out in the past with Orono. There's a state of Minnesota Bureau of Mediation Services, and they provide services to various government agencies, labor unions, things like that. I did propose that to Mayor Walsh probably back in 2019. Let's have the two cities sit down and mediate with the Bureau of Mediation Services. That was declined. I brought that up again here just in February when we met at the Capitol with Councilmember Steele and Johnson, and Councilmember Johnson specifically declined the offer to meet again. And certainly, keep putting it on the table there, but that'd be something else on Monday at Orono for those who are going to that meeting to ask, hey, what do you have to lose? Why not sit down and mediate with Long Lake? Wouldn't that be better than, fire department being broken up or that sort of thing? So that's certainly something on the table, and yes, we're absolutely open to negotiations still. We were waiting since January, so perhaps after the needs assessment, they'll be back to the table. And just great comments by Kelly Shaughnessy, again, the birthday boy in the back of the room there, but a lot of experience. And I just want to point out the political boundary aspect you brought up. And for those of you who weren't here in our November meeting, it was about, fire departments were not, back in 1977, they were created by the fire chiefs at that time, driving out a 10-minute response radius from the fire stations. That's what I was told by the current fire chief of Maple Plain, and that's where the boundaries were drawn. I grew up in Orono over by Stubbs Bay, and it was pretty close to where Maple Plain Fire came, and would have, like up the street from me would have been Maple Plain Fire, and it was Long Lake Fire at our house, but it was, just a crow's nest, kind of distance from each fire station, and that's what the boundaries were created. It has nothing to do with the cities, and that's kind of what we're trying to get to here. We're trying to remove by this fire district concept, we're trying to remove the political boundaries and focus on public safety and response time. So, and then finally, as Todd pointed out, as Chief Van Allen's report points out, we all need to pay more for fire service. Long Lake, Medina, Plymouth, Minneapolis, you name it. In Minnesota, we're 45th in the nation in how much we spend on fire service. So all of us need to come out of this with our property taxes increasing to pay more for fire service. We just wanted to make sure it's done efficiently and in collaboration with our partners. That's our ultimate goal here is Long Lake. So thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it. We'll see, I'm going to be at the Orono meeting on Monday. Maybe I think some of my fellow council members might be there. Hope to see you there as well. And that will be hopefully another great discussion. But yes, keep putting pressure on all of us here to come to a resolution and still hopefully we can come to one that most importantly keeps the firefighters together. So thank you, everybody, and remember, grab that sheet on the way out, and feel free to take one. So thank you, and have a great rest of the evening.
He's in the way of the camera here.
Yeah, that's okay. You'll be immortalized.
I did not know there was a lot of oh, yeah. What do you mean? Oh, yeah. No, it seems like something that's big enough for a referendum. It's not great. You already know. I think you guys have to be there. I think government. I'm sure you did read the proposal. And stated the plan, as we voted on in June, is to immediately put concrete fields in the hall area and have them reserved by at which point they will solicit applications.
The fire truck ready because City Hall will go down.
Did Jay Nygaard sit down here already?
There he is.
There it is. Getting signatures. You're not wearing your pin. Oh, you are. There.
You wear a pin if you got the gavel. Gavel, badge.
Jake, Cody Mark. Meet you as well. Trying to reach out to a Facebook Messenger that's on my first. I just heard from a couple of my friends tomorrow and joined on Saturday. Oh, I can't wait for it. Yeah, I'm just taking that up. It'll be good, and I hope you put on a good show for you. I just want to, thanks for the shout out. I just want to ask about the I just want to let you know if I can request a question. I know that I will tell you that the first time you talked to me, by their own accord, they don't want to. What was their role when they waited that house that was on fire and what the environment was like. About what we're doing.
meeting. Turbine guy is gonna sign off. See y'all.
Okay.